In a smartphone world where foldables are increasing in number, LG comes back with their concept that includes a second complete screen. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? This is the LG V60 ThinQ with the dual screen case. Okay, so there is quite a bit to talk about here, and the LG V60 ThinQ does have all of the specifications that you would expect from a flagship, and then you're able to add on yet another screen on top of this already pretty complete setup. Let's get through some of the specifications. Now, while you're going to be seeing the dual screen later, which obviously means there's a lot of multitasking involved, this phone is definitely up to the task. It has a 6.8-inch OLED panel at Full HD Plus resolution, which might already be a little bit odd for some of you out there who are very spec hungry. So no, you're not going to get Quad HD resolution on here. Those high resolutions are actually becoming a little bit less commonplace in flagships these days. Perhaps Quad HD is not being deemed totally necessary from everybody, and we have seen a lot of people say in the comment sections of certain videos that of course Full HD is more than enough for most people. But you know what, for a phone that is this big, maybe you might actually see a little bit of a difference, and that's because the phone is actually quite large. The screen itself already has that high number, and then the phone is wrapped around that entire thing and is a chonker of a device. No joke, this phone is big. I don't really find it that hard to maneuver around it because at least the left to right reach is not too bad when using in one hand. But of course, time will tell if this ultimately is a comfortable phone to use on the daily, especially when you factor in just how much more you're getting when you add in the dual screen case. Now, when it comes to design, I do want all of you to get into the comment sections below and tell me what you think. As I was using the V60 ThinQ, I couldn't shake the feeling that this felt like a supersized version of another device that I liked from 2019. If you look at it closely enough, you might see it. So let me know what you think also in the comments below. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just something that I noticed while using this phone. Rounding out the specifications, all of the power that you would need is in here, including the Snapdragon 865, including the 5G modem, so this phone will be 5G ready. You get 128GB of onboard storage with a micro SD card slot, 8GB of RAM, and a whopping 5,000 mAh battery. Probably not much of a surprise considering how big the phone's body is. But speaking of features that this big body is able to accommodate, you still get a headphone jack on here. LG is still a big believer in its own quad DAC technology. And for those of you out there who need really low latency, virtually no latency when it comes to things like mobile gaming, well, a pair of headphones that can plug right into the phone might be paramount. And LG made sure to mention that during our meeting, but ultimately the quad DAC is going to allow for some really high fidelity audio, and I look forward to actually listening to some really high quality music using this phone. The entire body is still mil-spec'd, it still has an IP68 rating, and it has an extra button for that Google Assistant key. Speaking of the audio, and this is one way for me to sort of segue into the camera stuff, there is a new mode based upon the 4 mics that are installed on this phone. Using the video mode, you can actually customize the way that the audio is recorded via something called the voice bokeh. You can customize how the audio recording is being done and potentially isolate someone's voice from the rest of the ambient sound. But that's just one enhancement that was thrown into the camera package here, so let's go ahead and get into that right now. As far as the specs are concerned, you do get a 64 megapixel main sensor and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. The third lens that's on there is what they call their Z camera, which is the time of flight sensor, which should help with depth information and also capturing good portraits.
I mean, if you've seen my LG videos before, you know that I always do something like this. I always bring the rear camera and the wide angle camera in particular, point it at myself, do vlogging that way. Super easy to do, especially with those volume buttons over on the side. Just hit record, get a nice wide angle vlog video. Easy peasy.
The front-facing camera is a 10 megapixel shooter at f1.9 aperture, which should help a little bit with that depth of field for portraiture shots and a nice soft background. There should be a lot of options for getting really good photos and videos with plenty of different modes for your creativity, helped along by further tools like optical image stabilization and dual pixel PDAF, phase detect autofocus. Other modes include the night shot, and even if you don't get a dedicated zoom lens on this phone, there is still a 2 to 10 times crop zoom using that 64 megapixel sensor. Probably one of the main marquee features added into here is 8K recording. Now, what LG actually did with their camera is tune it to do 26 frames per second 8K video. The reason why is because they noticed that even when some cameras are advertised at recording at 24 frames, there are some dropped frames because it does take a lot of processing power in order to keep up that 8K recording. So they wanted to max out the sensor as much as possible, and the processing of course, so that even if there are a couple of dropped frames here or there, you're still going to get the bare minimum of 24 and around that area. And of course, rounding all of that out are experiences you can expect from an LG Pro video device, including manual video control, so you can actually cater all of the settings to what you want, just like you could on a DSLR. Alright, so we can finally talk about the most unique part about the LG V60 ThinQ, and it's something you might be familiar with by now, the dual screen case. The screen in the dual screen case is also Full HD+, it's an OLED panel. It basically matches one-to-one with the original screen on the phone itself. That way you get the same exact experience on both sides. Now the dual screen case itself is also pretty meaty, and on the back you actually get this textured feel to it, so it actually feels very heavy duty. On top of the fact that this phone is really big, you're just adding more to the size of it. It actually feels like a big old notebook in your hand. And that might be to its benefit because you are able to multitask with two different apps on either side. When you connect the dual screen case, you actually get an app drawer on the left where you can open up any application, and then you can of course open up a second one on the main phone and be able to do two things at once, being able to copy and paste between the two from time to time if you need to. One of the main enhancements to the dual screen case this time around is the ability to expand applications, and a lot of Google apps support this now as well, including YouTube. Admittedly, it does look a little bit odd. You're trying to get a full screen video on these screens, but there's always something right in the middle cutting it up. That's the reason why it's called the dual screen. It's all about doing two things at once. This is a nice trick, but ultimately multitasking is going to be the name of the game here. Other features return, like the LG Gamepad, where you can use one screen as the actual gamepad for whatever game you're playing on the other screen. That way you can have something akin to an actual gamepad, even though it's all touchscreen controls still. At least all of those controls are taken away from the view of the game. That way you can keep your fingers away from the action. There is one thing that I discovered in the fact that this phone and the dual screen case are a lot larger this time around. Sometimes you're able to do selfies because the hinge can be quite strong, and at times you are able to get the hinge to sit where you want it to, but since the phone is so heavy, more often than not, the whole thing is just going to plop down. Obviously, part of the reason for that is because the dual screen case can actually fold all the way around, so you don't necessarily have to hold it in that notebook fashion. You can still hold it as a super thick phone. It seems like LG is taking everything that they know separates them from other manufacturers and just turning them up to 11. They are one of the few that still provides a headphone jack, and even then, it has a quad DAC for even higher fidelity audio. The phone is large, so is the battery, and the specifications match the kind of power that LG wants to have out of the V60 ThinQ. Only time and my review unit will tell if the camera experience is up to par with some of the great things that we've been seeing so far this year. But ultimately, if you're looking for some of the best and probably the biggest that LG can offer in a smartphone, you're already looking at it, and we're not even that far into 2020. The LG V60 ThinQ 5G with the LG dual screen will be available in a number of weeks on AT&T, T-Mobile, US Cellular, and Verizon. Look forward to my full review where I'm not only going to be checking out that camera for my typical real-world camera tests, but of course I'll try my best to get some media and some gaming done. Of course, the dual screen is great for applications like that. As always, thank you very much for watching, and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Drop some likes on this video and then get into the comment sections, and I will be in the comment sections for pretty much the rest of today when this video first comes out. So let's go ahead and have some discussions about the LG V60 ThinQ. From there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, I would just remind you to enjoy your tea, everybody.